Hey everybody, Devin here. Today I have a challenge for all you new web developers out there. I want you to recreate the Google homepage. It's going to start out as a fairly straightforward challenge, but then I've got some additional level up challenges you can try if you want just a little bit more. Let's go to the computer. Alright newbies, it is time to get your hands dirty and write some HTML and CSS. What I'd like you to do is I want you to build Google. Not the whole search engine, certainly not the whole company, just build a page that looks like this one. You don't need to worry about making it work. You don't even have to worry about any of the interactive elements like this drop down or anything like that. Just make it look like this. A couple of quick notes just before you get started. Don't view the source on this page. That's cheating. What you may want to do though that's not cheating is you may want to save this logo. You can just right click on it and click Save As. Then you can use that in your copy of the page. These two little icons in the search bar, the magnifier and the microphone, those are SVGs, and they are just embedded SVGs. They're right in the DOM. What I mean by that is there is actually an SVG element on this page that defines those two icons. I will grab those two and make them available for you so that you can copy and paste them without seeing the rest of the source code for the page. This little menu button in the top right, I already mentioned that you don't need to worry about making the drop-down work, but if you want to try to create the visual style of the button, there are definitely a number of clever ways you could do that. One thing you might want to try that would be useful experience and would get you close to that icon, but not exactly, is to use Font Awesome. It is an icon font that you can use for free in your projects, and it gives you access to a ton of different icons to use in your UI. I did a search for grid, and I found one that's kind of close, this TH icon. It's not perfect, the proportions are a little bit off, although there are actually some ways you could maybe tweak it and make it look a little bit closer. I'll leave those to you. But also, if you find that part intimidating, feel free to just leave that out and build everything else. That is basically the project. If you want to stick around, I've got a few additional challenges you can take on if you want to go a little bit further. After I give those, I'll pause again, and I'll come back with a few more hints if you need a little bit more guidance about how to get started or how to approach this problem. Alright, for those of you that want some extra credit, here's some challenges that might make things a little bit more exciting for you. One thing you'll notice on this page is that when you hover over the search box, or when you are focused in the search box, it has this little shadow. See if you can also build that shadow. If you want bonus points on top of that, see if you can build this drop down that comes down when you're focused. So there's a hover style that's a shadow all the way around, and then there's a drop down that's present when you're focused inside the field. I would start with the shadow, and you can have the shadow on both hover and focus. Then maybe try your hand at the drop down if you get that and still want more. Your next challenge is to make the search work. And I don't mean to build your own search engine. All I mean is to have your fake Google page send queries over to actual Google and display the results page. Quick tip on that one, you should be able to accomplish this by using the form's action and method attributes. Next up, go ahead and build this Google Apps drop-down menu and make it work when you click on this button. There are a couple of approaches you could take to this. You can of course use JavaScript, and I'm guessing that's probably what Google does. But you could also do some clever things with a checkbox and some adjacent sibling styles in CSS. I won't go into that any further, I'll leave that for you to discover. And the last challenge I have for you seems pretty silly, but it is something that I've actually used a few times. I want you to flip the entire page horizontally. So it should look something like this. This is one CSS rule that can accomplish this whole flip. Those are all the additional challenges. Now, if you want to stick around, I have some additional hints for how to get started. If you want to get the most out of this project, definitely cut the video off now. If you feel like you need a little more guidance, there's no shame in that. Feel free to hang around. The easiest way to get started with a project like this would be through something like Codepen. Think of Codepen as like an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript IDE that runs in your browser. It also updates live, so you'll have your HTML in the top left, CSS in the middle, JavaScript in the top right. Then in the bottom pane here, you'll see the results of whatever you've coded in those top 3 panes. This does not mirror an actual development environment because Codepen does some of the boilerplate work for you. These 3 files are already linked together, so the HTML file already knows to pull in the CSS and the JavaScript that you write. You don't have to do that manually, whereas you would if you were building this page on your own. There are a few other tricks it does too that I won't go into right now, but if you just want the quickest way to get started, this is probably it. The only HTML you have to write would be what goes into the body here, and that's where I would start with this project. So I would flip back over to the page and I would start thinking, what are the elements I have on this page that I need to represent in my HTML markup? First, what are sort of the regions of this page? I really see 3 broad regions here. I've got a header at the top that encompasses the menu here on the left and the one on the right. Then I've got a main section, which contains basically everything in the middle of the page, the logo, the search box, and the buttons. Then across the bottom, I have a footer section, which has links on either side. That might be where I would start with this page. So I could start with a header element. Then I've got a main element. And then I've got my footer. And now I can just keep filling in detail from there. For instance, in my header, I've really got 2 sections, so I could break those out. I might just do a div for each one of those. Then in each of those sections, I've sort of got a list of links that I can use. So I might code those as an unordered list. And then each item within could be a list item within that list. So for example, about and store. You may be looking down here and saying, okay, this kind of sucks. This doesn't look anything like Google. But that's fine right now. We are not worried about styling yet. We're just worried about getting the structure of the page in. My approach would be to continue filling out that HTML until I have all the elements of the page represented there. Then I would come over to this CSS pane and start styling it. A couple things to look out for that are sort of deceptively tricky. One of them is centering content. Not as easy as you think it might be. The other one is affixing this footer to the bottom of the page. All right, that should give you enough to get started. So I want you to take this and run with it and see how much of this page you can build out on your own. Okay, that is your coding challenge. This is a great one if you know some HTML and CSS, but you don't really know much more beyond that and you haven't really used any of your knowledge yet. This is a great place to start. Go off and do whatever you can. If you get stuck, feel free to email me, devin@raddevin.com. I would love to help you along. You can email me if you get stuck with some of the level up challenges too. The only thing that's left now is for you to fire up your editor and start building. Good luck, and I'll talk to you in the next one.